Today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things you've been told about. We're going to talk a lot about the lies. We heard on Samson's talk about how money was a store of value first, how it was used because of barter. Bullshit. Very simple. It was never used in barter, and it was never a store of value. In fact, that is a common little myth that floats around places like Wikipedia and whatever else. Yes, I actually have multiple doctorates, and one of them is computer science and economics. So I have a little bit of knowledge about economics. I've also got a master's degree in econometrics, and oh God, I've got 10 masters, so I won't list them all and bore you. Now, at the end of the day, what do we have? We've got money. What is money? Early forms of money were credit. At the end of the day, there was some form of doing that. It's all stored value. But stored value not as a store of value, but as a means of exchanging value. So we're going to talk a little bit about these things and open up some of the things about Bitcoin so that you can understand, because the power of Bitcoin is within Bitcoin. That's our big lie we've been told. We've been told, oh, Bitcoin's broken, right back from selfish mining and all these other things. All the lies designed to take away the power of Bitcoin and basically tell you that it needs to be fixed, that a bunch of technocrats need to fix it, centrally planned, because we can do better. We can make it better. We can just sit there like every other technocrat and make it better. So we're going to first of all talk about different network forms. Everyone sits there and goes centralized, 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 except not a single person I've seen saying that has a bloody clue what the frick centralized means. Centrality in network theory has to do with the number of edges to vertices. Quite frankly, Bitcoin has become far more centralized. Why? Because of the way that it's been distributed as a mesh. Bitcoin Cash and others will remain not centralized, and we'll get there more over time. And I'll give you some demonstrations. In the next weeks, months, etc., we're putting together a whole lot of videos, animations, everything from something my grandmother will understand right up to mathematical equations, all the rest, so that you can say it's technobabble. But all of it will link in so that you can link my technobabble to something you can show to your 3-year-old and have them understand. So, first of all, I'll talk about an overlay network. Bitcoin is an overlay network. It works because it sits over top of anything else. It doesn't matter whether you have BlockStream's really slow satellite network that actually uses the technology of the same equipment that I was using in the 90s, except cheaper and better. It doesn't matter if you have something like text, something like CoinText, some methods such as the Twitter bot to send everything, as long as you can send data. Because one of the issues that you get told is that you need to run a full node and verify everything. No, you don't. No, you can't. You can sit there and verify things if you want, but you don't actually do anything as a node unless you are a full node. And a full node, if you read the white paper, mines. You vote with CPU power, which is now ASICs. So Bitcoin works because of these little squiggly lines here called math, and this formation of what is called a supernode, a superpair, or a giant network, depending on the particular area you're talking about in either epidemiology, in network graph theory, computer science, very similar concepts, and at the same time, we have a central force that is not centralized. That's a big distinction. As I've said earlier, you would need billions of Sybils right now to compromise the network on Bitcoin. Some of these things like selfish mining, where they talk about gamma, you actually have a negative gamma. The more symbols you put out there, the slower your selfish miner becomes. You actually help the honest miners by attacking the network. There's a reason for this. This is what happens as Bitcoin forms, as machines turn on. Looks like a little petri dish full of bacteria, whatever else forming. But what happens over time is every node on the system is incentivized to connect to as many as possible. Miners want to get their transactions out quickly. Not one, not two, everything. So back in 2002, there was a lot of work by Strogwitz, etc., on small world networks. These are forms of near-complete graph. We have the percolation as that occurs. What we see here is not one or two. We have occasional Raspberry Pis out here. Like, here's our little Raspberry Pi on the edge of the network, basically useless and doing nothing, compared to the center of the network there that is densely interconnected. If you're a merchant, if you're Coinbase, you connect to everyone. It is in your interest to. Because if you have those nanoseconds difference, you lose money. If you're a miner, every second counts. One of the things people don't understand is it is not a linear system. That means there are not equal numbers of 20-minute and 4-minute blocks. There are more 4-minute blocks, way more 4-minute blocks than there are 20-minute blocks. That is the nature of an exponential distribution. Lots, little. That's how it works. Over time, what we see is a dense, highly interconnected, basically group of nodes that connect to every other node on the network. On a ring format, this is the same thing. So our miners connect everywhere. Because as a miner, if you can spend a little bit more money getting that much maligned $20,000 node I talked about, not your Raspberry Pi, it pays you up to $2 million benefit for the $100 million miner, which is not huge now. So that additional bit of hardware returns your money 100 times. I'm sorry, anyone who runs a business and realizes they can get a 100-time return on money, anyone as a business person have a guaranteed 100 return on money, 100x, put your hand up if you won't take that opportunity. Well, I got one, but that's fine. There's always one. Compare that to Lightning. Lightning and other things, and how people think Bitcoin work, is a mesh. This is how propagation happens around the Lightning network. Basically, notice as we're waiting here, and say we've got something on the other side of the globe, eventually it'll get there. So we've sent our transaction, and we're up the other side of the earth, and it's really nearly instant, eventually. I'm sure it will be instant. Oh, here it goes. There we go. Instant, sort of. Not. Bitcoin is that. That is the actual sort of model of how Bitcoin works. It is hugely degree-centered. As it forms, everything pulls into a tight ball. Every machine connects to everything it can. It is known as what is effectively called near complete. You connect as much as possible as a miner because you're incentivized to. Now, what this actually means is we start connecting all over the place. So we are resilient because we connect everywhere. So here we have our network structure. We have our miners and our users, and they're all connected in a big mesh. It's a small world network mesh, though. So when people start getting there, and we even have a few disconnected areas because we're going to say it's early on and not where Bitcoin is now, we have our users there, and someone will send a transaction. Once that transaction propagates around the network, they go to multiple parties. So the user sends, and you'll notice the miners now nearly simultaneously have that, and then bang to the rest of the miners. The network distance in Bitcoin is 1.32 plus or minus 0.7. And I'm sure a few people who actually understand graph theory will understand that a distance of under 2 is remarkably small. What it means is we send a transaction and it just gets there. Bam, sent, done. That's it. There is no way to compromise it. Now, I put out a post that some thought was to do with April Fools, whatever else. BIP 70. If I give a transaction and I send it to the merchant now sends my transaction onto the network. The merchant decides when. If you're going to double spend against me and you do it before I do, I as the merchant detect you. I can do it in milliseconds. If you do it after me, you lose. Here's the thing. You cannot preempt and time something I as the merchant will do with someone on the other side of the earth. There's no need for me to know this because there's no way you can preempt it. You're always after. If I hit the button, you hit it next, you lose. That's why Bitcoin works. No matter what, you lose. The way that this works on this network is each of these nodes send out a hash. It basically pings the other nodes and it self-forms every transaction and every block. There is no routing details. Every single transaction in Bitcoin remodels the network. It then sends. Because of that remodeling, it is optimally efficient. Bitcoin does not scale at all these BS sort of n squared type things and whatever else. When you're talking about miners, Bitcoin is sublinear. Not linear, sublinear. At scale, it grows faster than linear in sort of curving down. It actually gets better the bigger the network is. So that's some of the stuff we're releasing shortly. That's some of the stuff people don't want you to know. Because Raspberry Pi. If I run my Raspberry Pi, I can help the network. Except you don't. Because the miners always get the transaction before you. By the time any Raspberry Pi ever existing on the network has verified a packet, every single miner has decided to mine it or not. Full stop. There is not a single piece of data on the Bitcoin network that has ever been verified by a non-miner. After the fact, yes. Nothing has been broadcast apart from the first user ever. That's verifiable. You want to trust but verify. Check it. I'll give you the tools later this year. You can sit there and analyze the blockchain and find out when Roger lost money, and I'll pick on Roger again, because he sent a slightly bad packet that was a little bit too big and miners rejected it. Roger lost money because miners found out he did that. Not end user nodes. Miners rejected Roger's packet because they went, beauty, we can take money from Roger. That's why Bitcoin works. We're incentivized not to collude, but to compete. There is no stand round kumbaya circle jerk here. This is competition at its finest. When we remove links in Bitcoin, it doesn't go down. Bitcoin Cash with less nodes and fewer miners right now to stop working needs to have 900